He's got the Christmas theme on.
Fuck yeah, dude, it's Christmas. December. December is Christmas. My whole house has been decorated since before Thanksgiving.
This is the Tapped In Podcast, the podcast for beverage distributors that want to empower their sales team to drive business results. Listen up and welcome back to another episode of the Tapped In Sales Podcast, your podcast for beer distributors by beer distributors. Boys, we are in the Christmas season. Mikey, look at you. You are festive and going in the background. There might be an early cut, so we'll see if I make an early cut on the edit and talk a little bit about Christmas. But ho, ho, ho,
Ho, ho, ho.
Look at that beard there, Mike. It looks incredibly similar to my natural born white one now.
It's getting kind of close. I like it.
Oh, I love it. So Ross is in, let's, cross fingers. We'll see. He's talking about moving back into his place next week. We'll see if we get a new podcast background. I hope that the workout is still on the mirror. We'll see if it is.
No. I should have a legit office now.
A legit office now.
Legit office.
Boy.
After spending 6 months on the road homeless, it's about time.
We're in pink linen shirts. Early winter.
Hanging out in an Italian villa in Tuscany. It's fight them. It's cry for me, please. But
yes, It is cry for you, please.
Yeah.
But you've been back in the U.S. for some time now. So
yeah, I was supposed to move in at the end of September at the latest, and it is what are we at now? Mid-December.
Early December. Yeah, early December. Mid-December.
I can't imagine being kicked out of your house for that long. That's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
I know. Well, we're going to do a couple new segments. We're going to start with Pepsi refranchising rumors. And we had Eppolito Christian and Co., they're a deal maker in the beverage space, do a lot of transaction work, some valuation work, and a handful of other things. But Coke, a little bit of backstory for the group and the listeners out there. Coke went through this whole process. This is a pendulum swing story, right? That Coke and Pepsi both were independently bottled, independently franchised long ago. Both networks went through a cycle of, hey, we should just buy all of these. And, I don't know what happened the first time around. I think it was purchase all of these, independent bottlers and independent distributors in their networks, make them all a single entity inside of our wholly owned operations, and we'll just run it. We can do it better than the independent operators. Coke went through the process a few years ago of actually rebottling or pushing this process back out to a private organization. Coke has got 63 of their bottlers that make up 63 bottlers in total. 92% of their volume is handled through the top 10. So we're talking about some big Coke bottlers or Coke distributors out there. One of the largest is a beer distributor in Reyes. They are doing business with Coke in the Chicago area, some of Michigan, if not all of Michigan too, Mikey, and a fair amount potentially in California, but I'm trying to remember if that's accurate or if I'm armchair experting that right now. And now the rumor is that Pepsi is considering doing the same. Pepsi has a process in which they are doing everything for the most part internally. They've got some independent bottlers already, but maybe they want to do something else out there, and maybe they want to push this out potentially through the beer network. Big chatter around the AB network stepping under the plate. Anheuser-Busch has had a relationship with Pepsi at corporate for quite some time. So that's one of the reasons why that's coming up and talking about. But at the same time, this article and what Eppolito Christian talks about too is that there's 350 to 400 AB distributors versus the Coke network basically has 63 and top 10 make up 92. Do we think there's a place for distributors to get into this game? Obviously, the largest independent beer distributor already has in Coke. But what do you guys think about this? Does this make sense? Is this something you think is going to happen? Or is this just Wall Street pontificating and pitching ideas and being financial engineering at its best.
I mean, honestly, when we look at it, I don't think there's a single distributor that's big enough to take on, right, everything. But I think honestly, forming alliances is going to be the way to get some of these some products on our trucks. And you see it with a couple of those places you already mentioned, like Reyes and Columbia and things like that, places like that that have already moved into that path. But I think alliances, if we form alliances, statewide alliances, kind of like we do have the blue network, red network, right? We're always asking ourselves, how do we sell more, get more product in our truck without growing beer, without more beer? Well, this might be the answer for most too.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask the dumb question. Why are they wanting to do this? Has anybody? I mean, you're the hard-hitting journalist, bud. Tell us what people are saying.
I think people are pontificating the idea that can local execution really drive better practices, and can the corporate operation that is really a marketing and manufacturing company get out of the capital expenditures and local governance around running beer distributors, right? They're still capital intensive. You're having to do truck, repaints, remanaging all the trucks, warehouse logistics, all the warehouses. There's a lot of capital intensity in the logistics network. And can that dollars be repurposed in different ways, and can it be refocused with an elevated execution opportunity as Coke has seen? That's the argument, I think, on paper, without getting too much in detail about some other thoughts that might be out there too. I think that's where I'm reading into this the most.
You think, another question too, but do you think the recent I guess sale of or movement with Alani and some of those other NA brands, where we've witnessed beer distributors just absolutely build brands, right? The last episode of the podcast, we were talking about building billionaires. Do you think some of that has to play in it to where Pepsi's like, hey, we got something going on here, right? We're getting these brands going through beer networks that are just blowing up. And, we talk about all the time how beer distributors can build a brand from the bottom up. Do you think that they're kind of looking at that and going, hey, shit, we want our foot in the game with more of our products?
I mean, on paper, that makes sense. At the same time, one of the operational challenges of bringing on a brand or a portfolio as large as Pepsi's is that when you have a golden case, right? The whole idea behind the golden case, of selling a golden case, is that you're not adding more infrastructure around the delivery side and the operation side of the organization. It's additive to your route to market already. If you think about how much Coke and Pepsi is sold in the 4th of July period, that's multiple trucks in the week that are full truckloads to a Walmart or a Meijer or, a Giant Eagle, one of those big grocery stores. And I've always made the joke that beer distributors give wine and spirits folks a hard time around how busy the wine and spirits folks are in October, November, December. Give me a break. But then the Coke people and the Pepsi people look at us and make fun of us for how busy we are as beer distributors in the 4th of July week. A big order at a reasonably sized Meijer or Walmart in a middle market community might be 1,000 cases for a beer distributor. But a small order for a small market Coke and Pepsi might be 2 or 3 orders of 1,000+ cases at a Walmart in 4th of July. So if you do this, or if you do move in this direction, not all of these dollars are going to be golden cases, and not all of them will fall to the bottom line, because you're going to have an incredible investment in the operational side of your organization to support the infrastructure of making all these deliveries. So it's great on paper. It looks incredible. You're going to have all of this new volume hit on your reports, and you're going to feel really excited about how much volume you're selling. But how much money is going to fall to the bottom line? It's not the same method of the madness as adding a brand where you don't have to add all the operational expense to the game. So that's the gap that I see between the two. But Ross, you asked, what's the reason for doing this? Do you see a reason for it? Are you thinking about a different way too?
Well, I mean, I think I had the same thought that Mike did, tying it to our last conversation, but I have a hard time imagining they're thinking about it from that perspective. which is that the success of the three-tier system in buildings brands, when they sell over and what their follow-through is after they move over and what the execution looks like, I have a hard time believing that's the reason. I mean, I think logically amongst the three of us, that makes logical sense. But I think I think we got to follow the money. Two things can be true here, but I think you're right. I think that taking on this as a beer distributor, I just don't think we're efficient enough to handle this. We're just not as good at A to B with zero service. Zero service is a strong word, but
Low service.
Low service. Maybe that's a better term. It's not as
It's
a
negative. Different type of service. It's just a different type of service.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look at it from a financial perspective, I think you're more right with your first inclination, Bud, which is these are capital intensive businesses with very low operating margins, right? So that's an anchor around the neck if you're a multinational brand company like Coke or Pepsi. I think it's an anchor on your balance sheet. So the question is, you're balancing control to market and the ability to leverage those fixed assets for debt versus the idea that it's, like I said, it erodes your operating margins at the corporate level, which impacts your forward valuation model too. So I'm more inclined to follow the money here than I am to think that there's a grandiose idea that somehow, they look at the three-tier system and think that we're better at building brands and therefore we should move that direction.
So let's look at their operating margins, right, Ross? So publicly traded companies, and we've talked about this on the podcast, they trade off of what your operating margin is in some way, shape, or form. And if you're going to add more complexity to a publicly traded company at a dilutive margin, so a less margin, that is negative for share prices. This is one of the things that has plagued Kellogg's for years. And I pick on Kellogg's because we know it well, being from Southwest Michigan. Kellogg sells sugary breakfast cereal. The gross margin contribution in any one of those boxes of cereal is north of 70%. It's sugar. It's not that expensive to manufacture. It's not expensive to ship because it's light. And when you manufacture a product and you make a business and build a business, an incredible business around a 70% margin or better, it's very hard to add anything to that Wall Street looks at as a dilutive margin, like Kashi, which is what they did, like some of the snack brands, which is what they did, and it's lower margin, and be like, ooh, great, they added complexity and more cost at lower margin. So now our high margin products are subsidizing our low margin products. That doesn't make Wall Street happy. So if you look at that through that lens of Coke and Pepsi, you've got Coca-Cola, their operating margin, gross margin is between 60 and 62%. PepsiCo's generally between 54 and 55%, just from quick research. Beer distributors don't operate at that kind of gross margin. And traditional distribution businesses, even if you just take beer out of it, just a traditional middle manager of a distribution company would not generally generate that type of operating margin. So while we are adding more money into PepsiCo's bottom line by saying or it's higher revenues, they also have an incredible amount of cost related to running this distribution network that's not anywhere near as close as what they are making on their sugar water, because that's what they're manufacturing. Instead of sugary treats and sugary corn treats, they're manufacturing sugar water and then putting it in a plastic bottle or a aluminum can and shipping it to a store. So I'm with you, Ross. It's to follow the money. Where is the P&L going? And can I remove the capital expenditures, the costs, and lower, in effect, lower revenue, but boost bottom line profits, which then will make my share price go up?
Yeah, and there's no growth in the distribution model, or very little, right? So the things that Wall Street's looking for, and this goes back to our conversation around the whole idea of YOLO. What is Wall Street looking for? What did you do for me last quarter?
Yes.
And I'm looking at operating margins, which you talked about, and growth. And owning a distributor is bad on both fronts. It is low margin and no growth, or very little growth. So unless you want to use those physical assets to borrow money, it has no value to you. In fact, it hurts your share price. And if you're a short-sighted CEO who's more concerned about making sure that the next year next quarter that your share price is up, that makes more sense. So, I think we can overthink this to a certain degree, but the way the world we live in works is, what'd you do for me last quarter? And when you put it in that context, it makes a whole lot of sense.
The mechanics of getting this done is, to Mike's point, is that if the beer distributor network, whether it be AB or Molson Coors or anybody really of any kind of cohort or coalition, is you've got to develop you've got to demonstrate, is a better way to say it, that you can do business with a partner like Pepsi at scale and not be a distraction of another call point and another touch point and another integration point at some way, shape, or form with that network, and with that, corporate partner. So, Michigan is a great example where you've got 24 operators, Mike, across 27 or 28 warehouses. Like, that isn't going to fly more than likely as the Pepsi partner, how that's going to work. So if you are big and if you cover tons of ground, or if you can create a corporate alliance in some way, and where you look outward facing like you're a network and a one-stop shop, that's a different animal. But if you're trying to go at this piecemeal one at a time, there's no way in my mind that Pepsi is going to welcome doing business with 350 or 400 distributors across the country. That's expensive, time consuming, and would probably negate any of the savings or upside they have by actually making this transaction or transition in some way.
Yeah, I mean, they want to minimize. I mean, the reason they, you own your route to market is control.
Yes.
And you want to minimize your loss of that. So, and get it off the balance sheet as quickly as possible. So I think that will lend itself to a certain degree of consolidation out the gate. It has to.
Yeah, we saw it in Michigan with a lot of crafts, right? Where we had an alliance with other AB distributors, where we basically would have one conversation with a supplier for statewide distribution through all of the different distributors, right? So there was one conversation, not 20, which is exactly what Pepsi would want. They're not going to want to have 20 different conversations. They're going to want statewide consistency, pricing, right? One set of KPIs. They don't want to deal with all that. And then there's the shipping too, right? Do they really want to ship this to 20 different distributors that are within, a few hundred miles of each other? Or are they going to want to do what a lot of craft suppliers do, right? With just a drop point. And then it's up to the distributors to move that around, which we've been known to do, and we can do. But the question is it worth it? I would think, but
I think the biggest.
I think you're going to end up more with like Reyes type purchases, because again, go back to the fact that there's two pools of capital. The people that are investing in Pepsi and Coke are not the same pools of capital that are investing in these conglomerated distributors like Reyes or Southern. Those people are the same people that are buying bonds. They want annuities. I invest this money and I get this return, and it's predictable and it's safe over time. It's a different investor class, and there's plenty of capital that's looking for that investment. And I think Pepsi's going to have no problem finding that capital.
Yeah, they will find the capital. They'll find people to partner with them on the capital for sure. Yeah, it's easy. That part is easy. The hardest part is, how much control do you want to lose? What's the network
Correct.
look like? What's the touch points? How much investment do I need to do in managing logistics differently from the network that I have now to the new potential network or partners that I'm going to make, relationships with? Do they care? Does Coke probably does care, but would Pepsi care to partner with Reyes as a full logistics partner? Like, just having a logistics partner, does that matter? Does that not? I don't know.
I mean, I think your segue here is I'm going to make it for you, which is towards AB and what AB is doing.
Yeah. What does AB?
I don't think we've talked about it, but I mean, are they moving towards a single partner?
And do they want to move towards a single partner in, like with Southern Glaciers, right? Is what you're thinking too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, we've been reluctant to talk about that, but I think it's worth bringing into this conversation here now.
Well, and Southern Glaciers this thing feeds into that same piece around the Southern Glaciers acquisition, where that market is roughly 5 million cases in CEs. It's incredibly difficult to work in New York. The mean, you hear stories all day long around like parking tickets that you pay as like a line item, a couple $1 million in parking tickets a year as just a cost of doing business in those big cities for those large wholesalers. And newsflash too, it's a fine. So you actually can't pay it as a pre-tax expense. You have to pay the fines after tax dollars, which is incredible. To have to continue to eat that on a regular basis. And they're losing money at that operation every year. So operationally, that relationship makes a ton of sense on paper, but it also changes control. I think that's the biggest thing about the AB acquisition there with Southern Glaciers is they're a different animal when it comes to control and how they go to market with their brands versus what your traditionally privately owned wholesaler looks like. But if we're sitting on the podcast saying distributors are expensive, they're capital intensive, they're not incredibly accretive to your margin, Anheuser-Busch's margin is in the 40s, is in the mid 40 range on a gross margin standpoint. So beer distributors' margins are not in not in the gross margin of 40% range either. They still have a fair amount of their velocity or volume sold through WODs, particularly out on the West Coast. Do those get transferred off sooner? And they have been a net seller of WODs, or wholly owned distributors, over the last 5-6 years now.
I think that the tie I'm making here is that AB and Pepsi might be heading to the same place, or wanting to head to the same place for different reasons, but ultimately to strike that balance between not having it as an anchor around their neck on the financials, but also not having the headache of a widely diverse set of families running distributors.
Do you think they're doing it at the same time on accident, or do you actually think they're working on it together potentially?
Ooh, do I have a tinfoil hat around here somewhere? Ooh, close enough. Here we go.
Close enough.
Ooh, going deep there, bud. I don't know. I think this, again, just follow the money. I think the incentives align that direction. What's that old adage? Show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome.
Charlie Munger. Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. It'll be a big news story. Both wholly owned distributors on the AB side and on the Pepsi side will be in the news as we look to Prediction Corner in 2026. We should do a Prediction Corner episode 2, by the way, later this year or first of next year. That would be something that would definitely be as a news. We can continue to ponder more internally as a group on what it actually means or what it actually looks like. But it is a fun conversation for sure. The other thing is that now we're on the back end of Thanksgiving, and we have a little bit of data around Thanksgiving. You guys have been doing some goal setting with clients as well. So I think it's fun to kind of talk about how did November play out? How did Thanksgiving play out? Some data that we've got from Beer Board's Thanksgiving 2025 report. Draft beer volume down 10%, package volume down 14%. This is versus Thanksgiving Eve of 2024. And this marks the 4th straight year of Thanksgiving Eve declines, going back to 2022, down 17%, 23 down 2.5%, 24 down 2.5%, and 25 down 10 and 14. So definitely a big trend, some bright spots and winners. Pacifico, we've been on that story for a hot minute. Guinness Draft, that's been on fire. Busch Light continues to move. That's on the draft side. Package side, Busch Light. Surf side, Heineken Zero.
Well, Mike, do you want to talk about your observations on goal setting this month?
Yeah, I'll touch a little bit on goal setting, and then I kind of go into just my hot take on Thanksgiving Eve this year. But goal setting overall for November, below expectation for most. I feel like it's Groundhog's Day sometimes when we're doing these monthly goal settings, because we're coming off of a rough month, planning for a good month, and then coming off of a rough month, planning for another good month. So a little bit of Groundhog's Day there. It's been a been a rough year for most. It really has for the entire industry, as we talk about almost weekly on here. But I think that it did fall below expectation. But I think that there's a couple things going into this that Thanksgiving Eve, at least, that we could talk about, a couple different spins on it, right? For one, when we look at overall just trends this year versus last year, there was a major snowstorm that hit the country this year too, right? Right at Thanksgiving. Here in Michigan, I mean, you didn't want to go out Thanksgiving Eve. We thought about it. We were going to go up to our local pub, but the roads were bad. The roads were extremely bad. And for me, they're bad because I'm the one out there in the 4-wheel drive plowing through snowbanks and not caring. But over 30 states were under a winter weather warning or advisory of some sort. It was a big system that came through. So I think that played a big part in it, right? Because Thanksgiving Eve is a out occasion. It is not an in occasion. Nobody's grabbing cases of beer and just sitting at home alone and drinking, by themselves on Thanksgiving Eve. The ultimate, I think, meaning of Thanksgiving Eve, at least for me and for most, it's kind of like a homecoming, right? What do? You go back home, wherever home was, where your parents were, where you grew up. Everybody comes back home for Thanksgiving. You go out to the bar and it's like
unofficial class reunion.
It is an unofficial class reunion. And that's ultimately what that holiday is. My kids ask me too, why is it such a big holiday? Because we were talking about that, biggest bar day of the year. Well, why? Well, we started getting into that conversation. And if we come back to our roots, that's what that occasion is. And I kind of feel like that has gotten lost over the years too, which may be playing into this decline that we're seeing. Because I feel like the need is still there, but we're not capturing the occasion. We're not really pushing the occasion as maybe on-premise owners, right? To where, hey, let's hold it for what it is. It's a unofficial high school reunion. Why not own it? Hey, if you're in town for the holidays, we're throwing a, Lakeview High School class reunion. Come on down. I want everybody to come to my bar, and I want everybody to know where everybody else is going when they come into town. That's how I'm going to capture that. I feel like we've really gotten away from that. Of capturing that occasion for what it really is, but also there's that weather part that went into it. And when you look at that article, the trends that were up on the brands that were up are pretty much in line with what we've been seeing most of the year, right? With Busch Light, Pacifico, NA, Beyond Beer. Those are the same brands. So I don't know if that really speaks into the holiday because it's just playing into the trends that we've been seeing all year. That's my hot take on Thanksgiving Eve this year. And I stayed in. I did nothing. I remember when I was younger, right? Early 20s, and going to my mom's for Thanksgiving, and Jamie and I would show up, and every year it was like clockwork. She was like, "Can we just have one Thanksgiving where you two aren't hungover?" And I'm like, no, you're not. Not until we're old and wise, and here we are still in our 40s with 2 kids wanting to go out on Thanksgiving Eve, and we didn't because of the weather.
Mom finally got what she wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
I can hear every brewery executive on the pod listening to Mike. We don't want a fucking weather report.
I know, but you have to think about that. It definitely, I know in Michigan, it played a big part, but I mean, all the way through Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Ohio, up through Pennsylvania. I mean, a lot of those states received a lot of snow. I mean, here in Michigan, we got 12 to 18 inches. I mean, north of here, UP, we're talking 40 inches. You don't even go out when you get that kind of snow. And in the states south of here, they're not used to seeing snow until January. They're not really prepared for it even in January. So it has to play a part in it for sure.
To me, this is a microcosm of the structural challenges in beverage alcohol and related to demographics and Gen Z not being particularly connected to drinking alcohol the way that our millennial brains would have been connected to it, or X and boomers before that. And that this is just a microcosm of that at scale because it's usually pretty big. And to me, Ross, that's what I think we're seeing playing out is just magnified because of where the other generations are in their, lifespan and demographic behavior versus Gen Z.
Do you think that the Gen Zers have lost that occasion? Do you think they even know what that occasion is? Does it even resonate to them? Or is that something of the past of like, hey, it's Thanksgiving Eve, we better go out?
They went through COVID. They don't care.
Yeah. I sit with Ross on this. Yeah. There's a big COVID gap around the culture of going out and drinking and being with your friends at a bar and participating out in public drinking like that through COVID, that whole behavior, that whole habit that was built in college or built if you didn't go to college and that was where you spent time with friends and then saw folks when they came back home from college is just like completely lost, right, Ross?
Yeah, and I mean, again, this is not necessarily the right pod for it, but I mean, the young generation is bifurcating and having a very negative pushback reaction against. I mean, I hate to say this, what's been done to them. You know, what was done to them during their childhood in school, with their schools closed, with what's been done to them from the fact that they have no affordability for housing, with the fact that they have no job prospects like prior generations had. Cost of living skyrocketing, which disproportionately impacts you if you don't have assets, which, quite frankly, if you're coming out of college, you have no assets. It's kind of the definition of it. They're pissed, and they're looking at the establishment, which includes us millennials and X and boomers, especially boomers, and saying, you know, you guys screwed us, and I don't believe anything you say. So whatever you are, I don't want to be that. And you know, whether that's as simple as, you know, how we view alcohol and how we view occasions. But again, I mean, it's how they're viewing societal structure too. I mean, you've got a direction that's going, you know, more towards the right, and you've got another that's moving towards the left with, you know, socialism. So, you know, you're getting, it's anyway, I don't blame them. I mean, they've gotten a raw deal.
It's not a happy picture. Leans into that secondary affordability question, Ross, that is out there around the brand that is doing well in both bright spots, Busch Light Draft, Busch Light Package. Affordability connected to it.
Mm-hmm.
I also think it says something a little bit about me too, as a younger drinker, that it's not Bud Light and Miller Light that the millennial or boomer, well, really the boomer or the Xer drank. It's not Michelob Ultra, which is what much of the millennials drink, or Coors Light, which is much of the millennial like light beer of choice. It's something new and it's cheap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, you know, if we're going to go down the rabbit hole of Gen Z and the drinkers and all that other stuff too, we've talked about it in the last few pods, but something that I've been kind of thinking about in the back of my brain that we've never really touched on, and it could be a contributing factor as well too. But today's society is 100% exposed online. Everything you see, everything you do, everything you believe, everything you want to talk about is exposed online through social media. And that has changed our world, whether you recognize it or not. But I mean, the three of us on this pod have lived through the world before social media and after social media, right? And we've seen what it's done. And you have to think that a portion of that does contribute. I mean, the fear of losing control, the fear of looking stupid because everything's posted online. And they're seeing people online, TikTok videos of people being wasted and out of control and shit-faced, and they don't want to be put in that bucket, and they sure as hell don't want to be put on that video. So I would think that some of that does contribute to that, because we're seeing everybody's everyday lives, where before social media, you didn't really see that. You weren't exposed to it as much unless you went to the bar and your buddy or somebody else there just absolutely got shit.
If they did something dumb, it stayed at the bar. It wasn't, you know, encapsulated in a phone and shared with everybody.
Absolutely.
There's the adage, the internet's written in pen, not in ink. Or sorry, in pen, not pencil.
Yeah, absolutely. And nobody wants to be a world star, right? And nobody wants to be that person, absolutely out of control, posted online or for everybody else to see, because you're right, it's written in pen. So you'd have to think that a little bit of social media probably plays into the reduction of consumption with Gen Z as well.
Ross, you don't mean that Snapchats aren't forever? I thought they got deleted after 24 hours.
Sure.
I didn't think they sat on a server anywhere.
Oh, sure.
Sure. There's that great clip from Succession where the two of the characters are like, so we've talked to the attorneys and we don't want you to say ATN, we're listening, because we actually are listening. You're like, what do you mean? It's like, no, so like our TV boxes are programmed, and in the user permissions, like they listen to everything at home. So like, we're listening is not a good tagline. The whole dudes do. On a brighter note,
it'd be a benefit to access some of those recordings so that you can actually win some arguments and go back and be like, no, this is what you really said. And this is how you said it.
More incredible relationship advice. Hack into the recording devices so you can get this. On the good news, though, look at this schedule. I got this from the Instagrams. Mom Loves Snacks says, I don't know who needs to hear this, but Valentine's Day, Saturday, 4th of July, Saturday, Halloween, Saturday, Christmas, Friday, New Year's, Friday, 2026. That is a good beer drinking schedule. I know not everybody likes all of their, holidays on the weekend or on Fridays, but this amplifies beer drinking behavior when more holidays are on Thursdays and Fridays than Monday, Tuesdays, Wednesdays.
But what does it do for functional energy drinks?
But what does it do for function? Who knows, man?
But I did want to finish the piece around the trends and the goal setting. I guess what's gotten me a little concerned is that, amongst our clients, we're seeing similar volumetric trends in the industry, or at least what it's been, that's -4, -5%, right? My concern is if we slip towards -10. And, amongst our client base, there's general positivity around, yeah, we can be down 5, but we can be up 3 on GP. But what happens if we slide to 10?
Yeah.
That's the concern I have. And we saw a little inkling of that in November. Mm-hmm. So, I think we can stay positive with 5% decline, because if we can get smart and effective around maximizing our profitability, we can overcome a 5% negative trend. I just don't know if we can overcome a -10.
The market will, that is where the expansion to other categories really plays into a role for us as distributors, and why we're still excited about the distribution network and the distributor tier is that you're not just selling beverage alcohol anymore. But if you are overweighted beverage alcohol, and with some of the losses to last week's episode that you've had in the NA game, you do have to rebuild that NA portfolio relatively quickly to surpass or get over or digest some kind of negative alcohol trend on that side of the aisle too, in a big way. And that's a good segment over to the power of positive thinking. One of the things that we've talked about a couple different times, but Ross, you wanted to drive more into this because we define our own reality is probably a good way to talk about the next segment, and how you are thinking about your business and how you're going about moving forward in spite of today's trends or despite of today's trends. And what I've been talking with clients and with prospects around is just because beer is down does not mean your profits have to be stagnant or have to be down as well. You can grow and you can create new opportunities for yourself, but it takes a mindset shift to be able to do that. How are we talking to clients, or how does that play out, Ross, in your mind, where we can literally define our own reality if we want to?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can go kind of nerdy here, but I think the proof positive is you watch things like Tony Robinson, right? I think a lot of people are familiar with that. The idea of projecting positive, and that has positive outcomes in your life. And I think the counterpoint to that is we all know the Eeyores in our lives, right? Eeyore, the character from Winnie the Pooh, right? And he's always right. And Eeyores are often sometimes good people, they're just genuinely good-hearted people. They just have a negative forward outlook on life and general disposition. And we just don't know why bad shit keeps happening to Eeyore. Eeyore seems to be a good dude. He gave his house to Piglet, but somehow bad shit keeps happening to him.
Tell us you have young kids without telling us you have young kids.
Does anybody still watch Winnie the Pooh?
Well, I can't say that I did.
But the point there is, I think we're starting to see we can go down a rabbit hole a little bit deeper here and say, okay, so what is quantum telling us? Quantum tells us that when particles interact, two different outcomes result, right? And the prevailing thoughts are either a Copenhagen interpretation that our sentience causes the wave function to collapse, right? So that literally our being does that. We observe and it collapses the function. And the classic case of that is Schrodinger's cat, right? It is neither dead nor alive until the observer opens the box, right? So we as the observer collapse the function. So that's one prevailing theory. The other theory is the many worlds theory, which is when particles interact, two universes are created, and it's just an infinite multiverse. Either way, that leads to a place where, if you're in the many worlds idea, then you want to be on the timeline of you. That's the better one. So there's a version of you that died in a car crash today, and there's a version of you that didn't, right? And then we have a small impact on which version of you tend to be. Poor Eeyore is always on the bad timeline of Eeyore,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then there's a positive version of Eeyore that's out there that's doing way better, right? So you're better off having a positive attitude and a positive projection. So when you're going in to sell, hey, I'm going to make this sale today. Now, you still may not, but the question is, are you more likely to do it? Are you more likely to end up on that path and be on the same path as the person you're selling to's path where they end up saying yes? And I think we're starting to see a kind of a confluence of the kind of the new age thinking around, hey, meditate, project what you want out of your life. And it tends to result in better outcomes. We know that, right? And you can take the religious aspect of the idea, you sit and you pray, right? And that's, generally speaking, over time proven to have positive outcomes for your life. If you have gratefulness and pray, then that tends to have better outcomes for you. If you subscribe to the kind of new age idea that you project positivity, every single day, like what Tony Robinson says, that tends to have better results too. There's convergence here, and there's a theme happening here. Don't be an Eeyore is the kind of if you can distill it down to one thing, don't be Eeyore. So that's kind of my little rant there, and kind of my going into the holidays. Try to stay positive.
I love it. I'm motivated.
Yeah, if you're relentlessly optimistic too, that's the way I like to think about it for myself, is relentlessly optimistic around that you can affect change and actually have an impact on what you want to do. And we've talked about this concept. This is more like today's conversation around this, Ross, is a little more detailed around the doom loop we've talked about before, where if you're stuck in the doom loop and you're constantly looking at negative sales trends and you're focusing on the wrong types of trends, or if you're talking about the wrong types of trends to your team over and over again, where you're exclusively focused on volume over and over and over again, that reinforces a negative photo of the world over and over and over and over and over again. And you accidentally trip into an Eeyore mindset, even if you may be relentlessly optimistic. And when we talk to clients about repositioning their mindset around profitability and how you can grow profitability in the face of a declining volume market, how that changes the perspective of the world, and that perspective shift. This is literally a shift of like, I looked at it from this 45-degree angle, and now I'm going to move over here to look at it from this other 45-degree angle. It's the same world, but that matters to a lot of people. And if you spend any time around children, you can watch this amplify and how they view the world. And if you interact with them negatively versus if you interact with them happily or excitedly, they will reflect that back to you almost immediately in a very, very interesting ways. And Mikey, adults are no differently. When you're out in the field working with the reps, talking about this mindset shift, you're seeing the same outcomes for the team too.
Yeah, absolutely. Attitude is everything, right? We all know the naysayers, and we all know the ones that want to win and don't be the Eeyore. but yeah, when you slide down the road of Eeyore and everything is just doom and gloom and negative, you're never gonna climb out of that, because that's all you're looking for. You're not looking for the positive anymore, like what Ross outlined there too. Like your mind, body, and soul is just attracted to all the negative around you, and that can blind you from any kind of positive around you as well. And that translates all the way down to a rep too, when we're out there running our route. And like you said, I walk in there, I'm going to make this sale today. I'm going to sell in this display. I'm going to sell in this new placement. It's in your head. You already know, right? It's just like sports or anything else. Keep your eye on the ball, your body will do the rest. You don't have to tell your brain to open your hand and catch that ball. You've already told your brain, I'm going to catch this ball. Your body does the rest. It's the same thing. We're walking in the account. You're telling your brain, I'm going to make the sale. Your mind will do the rest too.
Well, the other example of that is, Steve Jobs and the idea of the reality distortion field. He just believed it to be true, and then it became true, right? And it's the same thing on every interaction in your day. It's even if you, like you said, Mike, you're projecting that you're gonna, or you've already decided in your mind you're gonna sell that display in, and you meditate on that, and you think about that, and you project it. Subconsciously, you'll figure out what the right path to get there is. It's a weird thing about us as humans. And again, like I said, there's a whole lot of convergence on this right now. from all different directions. Like, again, there's multiple routes to get here, but there seems to be convergence around that from a scientific perspective, new age perspective, religious perspective, you name it, it's all converging.
Yeah. And Ross, you're right, because when this was first introduced to me, it was very woo-woo on my world. Like, it comes off to me as, if I think it will happen. And I'm an action oriented person. I want to affect the outcome and impact the outcome in some way. So I needed a better explanation around how my positive thinking would actually impact the decisions and the actions that I take, which then creates the reality that I'm looking for. Sarah, my wife, much more natural born woo-wooer, where she feels, and when I mean wooer, it's very much of a feeling for her. It's a connection to the emotional side of the behavior and of the thought process rather than to the action oriented side. Think feeling versus thinking, if you're listening. For me, it's much more of a thinking mindset than it is a feeling mindset. And then even before that, if you go back way before that, it was incredibly religious. It was pray, and you pray to somebody bigger than you, a God, whoever you worship in some way, and they are the ones in which they will bring good things to you. But that's then changed into, woo-woo, the science, the wave theory that you talked about, Ross. We're going to need to post one of those videos. So if you got a good one that will have a good explanation of collapsing the wave function, Ross, that you could send me, I could drop that into the show notes so people could get a better picture of that. And you both will love this. I talked about Schrodinger cat with a client recently as well too. Right. They can both be dead and alive all at the same time. I love it.
Well, if you really want to blow your mind, look at the 2-slit experiment.
See, I think I know what that is.
And I'll do a really shitty job of explaining it, but the particle is both like you're sending light through a slit.
Yes,
and it's both a wave and you'd have to look at it, but it's so crazy because it was both until the person looked at it, and there's proof that it was both.
Correct. Yes. But a computer can only see it in one way, but we can see it in both ways, right?
And this is a really interesting one that I've thought about a lot, which is people are stupidly afraid of AI, and there's reason to be so. But can they really be sentient if we collapse the wave function? Right? Now that's in a weird spot. Like maybe there's a soul, or like we somehow are special. It's getting to a weird spot where it's like, okay, so can a computer really be sentient if it's just circuitry and it can't collapse the wave function?
Mm-hmm. I mean, we are special. My mom tells me so.
But the other side of that is if you set up a piece of monitoring equipment on the other side of that wall, it can collapse the wave function.
This pod got real deep real quick.
It's so interesting. I knew we were going to go a little deep, so I thought it would be a fun little, it is important for us to talk about this. We're one of the few folks in the industry that really talks about mindset and behavior around mindset. And it is very important. There's an incredible amount of negativity out in the market, and we're realists around talking about the negativity. But our clients every day, the work we do with our folks on our team and on our clients, we are seeing folks win, and we're seeing folks win through behavior shift and through talking about these things and thinking about mindset shifts and making those mindset shifts and being excited about it. And that's really driving results for folks. And that's why we want to talk about this stuff. And that's why we get excited about it. So anything else today, boys, we want to cover or touch on?
I have one last thing. We're wrapping up the year. We're getting close to the end of the year. And I do believe I owe Ross one thing.
You owe him some money.
But you have to pick it up in person. I'm not mailing it to you.
I don't know when everybody will be in the same spot together at the same time again.
No, I have a crisp $20 bill for you, Ross, because I do believe after further research you won that bet.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Remind the folks what the bet was again.
The bet was over the velocity of which Busch Light Lime would sell through the market. My bet was that it would linger like Peach did and not have the sell through that was anticipated. And Ross was more on the optimistic side and saw that it was going to be a huge opportunity and was going to sell through. So we didn't hear of anybody having inventory lingering around. I don't see it out in the market. I think it, either orders projections were down, or Ross was right.
That's fair.
But yeah, here's your $20 bill. You come on out and get it. We can go sledding. We can go do some skiing and some sledding.
Why don't you send some of that snow to the Northwest? We got none of it here. It is like 50 degrees and
you can have it because we're getting more Sunday and then more next week too. So can't wait.
Well, boys, another great episode. You like what we're doing? Continue to like, listen, subscribe, share with a friend. You have any comments? I've gotten a couple comments and questions, which have been great lately. We'll bring those to the pod very soon. You can hit us up at info@vxptech.com. That's info@vxptech.com. We will be back again next week. We'll be recording all throughout the holidays with some great stuff planned coming up. You boys rock. Cheers, everybody out there in listener land, and we will talk again soon.
Cheers.